Matt Chat, where real people talk about real shit. And I'm here today with Andrew the Sniper Todd Hunter, professional MMA fighter. So go ahead and say hi to the guys.
What's going on, guys?
My name's Mike McGonigal, and I'll be your host, and we're just going to talk. So, Andrew, let's talk, man. What's going on with this UFC stuff?
Man, I had a bunk opportunity with the UFC. It's a shame that Dana White and Joe Silva didn't give me a real opportunity with 12 weeks notice to fight anybody in from 155 to 185 because I'd whip their ass pretty much. Anyone all the way up to the guys, I would say all the way in the top 5. I could hang with a lot of the guys that are there right now because of the way I stylistically match up to them in those divisions. For example, I tried to fill in for Nelson, Gunnar Nelson, on the Conor McGregor card is when I had a falling out with the UFC because Joe Silva was mad because I missed weight and I screwed the show and everything. But I want to go into depth about that. I didn't miss weight. I cut 31 pounds in 5 days, and I did most of it at 7,000 feet elevation in Mexico City. I was informed about the fight on 8 days' notice. So when I got there, everything was going good. I was all the way down, I think about 11 pounds out. I was taking an Epsom salt bath. And it's crazy because my coach put an ice cube on my head. And I went to sleep. I went unconscious. And when you put an ice cube on someone that's really hot, it constricts the blood flow to the brain. And that's what actually made me go into basically a coma for 4 hours. And it's unfortunate that happened. I woke up and I told the UFC that I could still fight, and the doctor deemed me medically unfit to compete. Following that, I hadn't talked to Joe Silva. I messaged him and Dana White about the Gunnar Nelson fight. I didn't know that Brandon Thatch had already stepped up. When Joe Silva called me, he told me Brandon Thatch had already stepped up, and then he started cussing me out. And, I'm a person of integrity. It doesn't matter if you're height deficient or not. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, and I'm not going to sell it to anyone for $1. And with that being said, that pretty much started the whole release process with the UFC to me becoming a free agent. Officially, as of today, I have not received release paperwork from the UFC. I don't know. I talked to my management briefly about it, and I haven't brought it up again. But I think it'll be coming in the mail within the next week or two, is what they said. When I get it. But if that happens, cool. If not, the Russian, I can't pronounce his name. He's just an opponent to me.
Well, let's talk real quick. There's a lot of stuff going on in the MMA world. That's a big weight cut in short notice, especially at elevation. And I'm hearing the scuttlebutt about getting rid of IV bags.
October, they're getting rid of IV bags. And
but let's a lot of guys are cutting a lot of weight, and a lot of people talk about it. But what's safe? I mean, is it safe to call fighters and say, "Hey, look, I need you an 8-day notice to be here at 7,000"? I mean, and what was going on before then? How soon after this contract was signed that you got that call? Did you know that you should be cutting down at all before that call? That maybe you should be maintaining a weight, or was it you just signed, you're happy, you're celebrating, then you get this phone call? I mean, how did all that plan out, and how do you feel as you talk about that and how hard that weight cut is? I want you to go into the IV thing.
Joe Silva called me on several occasions. Every time he called me for the Pat Cummings fight, right after Pat Cummings got knocked out by Daniel Cormier, and he does these guys favors. It seems like if they did him a favor, he does them favors, and he'll call someone on short notice because it gives you a competitive edge. And on top of that, he has you lose weight on short notice, which gives you a huge competitive edge because your body's not prepped for those kind of weight cuts. And a lot of promoters do it, and I think it's wrong, to be honest with you. I feel like there should be a policy or a fighters union that comes in and says, hey, if you don't get this amount of notice for a fight, then you're not obligated to fight, and you still get the other opponent still gets his full pay, because it's rigging fights. It's playing. You're the statistical guy. You're the guy that's going to change the outcome of this fight. When you get promoters that manipulate weight classes and fighters on short notice, it's bad for business. In boxing, I feel like it's kind of been the death of boxing, and in MMA.
If you were a promoter, how would you do it differently?
If the fight got canceled, I'd cancel the fight, put a new fight on the card. They'd both get the same amount of notice.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what do you think about this crazy IV thing coming on?
I understand. I was reading about it. The reason they're doing that is because they say the same kind of plastic fighters and other athletes in the Olympics can put urine in, and they can squeeze it out, and they can keep it at temperature where it passes the piss cup. That's their reasoning.
So they're picking up trace elements of the plastic.
Of the
bag.
plastic that's actually in the bag.
Okay.
But I think it's bullshit. I think that's what I think about it. I think it's going to cause fighters to die. Fortunately, we haven't seen UFC fighters die yet. Or I say UFC fighters, MMA fighters have already died all over the world, but there hasn't been one that died directly in combat in the UFC. But with this happening, without being able to rehydrate their brain, because they're going to push it to the limit so they can have the competitive edge, or they might be the champion like Robbie Lawler, and he might have been getting IVs. No one knows. So when he takes that kind of brain damage from those kind of punches, you might watch their brain swell from being dehydrated, and they might die right there in the ring. So, or in the octagon. So I think this is a bad idea. I think if you were going to reform this act, you should implement hydration testing, which is what they're doing with youth wrestling now. It's a great idea. You can still beat hydration. You can beat any kind of test, but the whole idea of a hydration test makes sense. And they check your body fat percentage, and they check to see where you were a month prior to that, and they check on you periodically, so you're not doing these drastic cuts, and you actually have to pee. So for the hydration test, so if you weigh in and you can't pee, and then when you do pee, you're dehydrated, then you're not going to be able to compete.
Okay, so as a promoter, you speak as a promoter, how do you balance out being a businessman and protecting your fighters?
Being a businessman, the way the promoters are acting these days, they don't protect their fighters.
That's what
unless they have a golden boy like Conor McGregor, or someone that's an asset that brings a whole country worth of people watching him and all that revenue that goes into their pocket. Then you're going to see stuff like that happen. It might even get as far as, like the boxing has rigged fights because of the financial gain to be made if there was a rematch and stuff like that. And I don't want to see it go that way. I think that's where the union steps in and says, hey, you have this amount of wins, you get paid this much. You have this amount of wins and losses, you get paid this much. So it's fair and it's equal to men and women. Because I'm watching a lot of these, and this is a touchy subject, but I mean, let's be honest about it. There's a lot of women competing in MMA. I mean, I was on a fight card where one debuted in the UFC at 2-0. So is that fair that she debuts in the UFC at 2-0 with proper notice? I mean, I've been in the top 5 prospect list for years, and I've got 20 plus fights. So I feel like a union has to be involved for both parties, and I feel like it's beneficial all the way across the board for all the fighters across the world.
I've been hearing, we all hear it, there's two camps. Some people argue for it, some people argue against it. The UFC has a lot, they put a lot of guys in fights that don't seem to have earned that number one contender position sometimes because it seems to make sense and it'll make money for them. What do you think about the national ranking system, and how loosely or tightly should promoters follow ranking systems when matching fights, especially for UFC titles and Bellator titles and legacy titles?
I feel like every promotion has to have their own ranking system, because there's so many ranking systems. You got bloodyelbow.com, and there's too many for me to even count. But that's the one right off the top of my head that if you make that, that's a pretty legit source. But like UFC.com has the ranking system for every weight class. So, and Bellator has the same thing. And so does World Series of Fighting and pretty much every promotion. So you get these guys and they have a certain amount of fights in your organization, then you rank them. But The problem is, you get the promoter who's dictating it. They're dictating the rankings for that organization. I think it should be an outside source doing the rankings for that organization.
How about the boxing commission that regulates the sport?
That would be great. And then you fight the number one contender. If you're the champ, you fight the number one contender. I mean, that makes sense. But then you talk about the business side of it. So I'm the champ. You're not telling me who I'm going to fight, because if I can make more money fighting someone else that's going to bring more viewers, and I'm getting a certain percentage of the pay-per-view buys, that's who I want to fight. Because I want to walk away from this and retire and and no matter what after this fight, walk away to the bank smiling. And that's the business side of it that these fighters need to understand is this is a business. We don't just fight each other like savages. That comes, if there's animosity towards each other, then great. Have fights like that, but there's a few fights where I feel like that about an opponent, and it worked out for me, and that's great. But I don't feel like that's what it's about. I feel like this is a business and it's entertainment. So if you can give the fans a good show, a great fight, and you can make the most possible money for your short career, that's what it's about for the fighter.
Interesting. Why do you fight? Why? Why do you do this? Why do you put your body through this? Why do you train so hard?
That's a good question. I find myself asking myself that more and more every day. I've always enjoyed the competition. From when I was a youth, I was ineligible, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't get the chances to compete when I should have been able to compete. And so I feel like I'm kind of living my youth at an older age. And I made a promise to my papa. I said, he told me that I would always be in trouble, or when I was young, or I would be ineligible, and he'd be like, and he would get frustrated with me because I couldn't compete. And he said, no matter what, and he was dying. He had terminal cancer. He said, no matter what, I want you to promise you don't quit till you get to the top, because you're better than anyone else around here in your weight class. And I said, I was a young kid. I would have told him anything to make him happy, but I made a promise, and for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been trying to keep it. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and there's been many times where I think about it, and I think, man, I was that dumb kid. I don't even know why I made this promise. But what? Talking about that, when I got beat in a boxing match right after he died, and man, it tore me up because I had a boxing gym in my backyard, and I spent so much time training with him, but my head wasn't in the right place. I was doing all the wrong things, and then I had an opportunity to box a few months ago, and I took the fight on like a week's notice, and I boxed. And man, just the smell of the boxing ring and everything, and like when I got in there, I was just really calm and collected, and I felt like I was back at home, and I felt like he was there. So I mean, at that moment for me, I feel like now when I finally get out there and compete, no matter how many people are there, I don't see anyone or hear anyone but him. And if you've never been in a fight, imagine getting in a car wreck. Okay, you can see everything happening, and then you think 1,000 things before you slam into the other car that slammed on their brakes, knowing you have no control over the situation. That's what it's like every time I fight. Learning how to control the chaos. Everything seems like it, seconds turn into minutes, minutes turn to hours, and hours turn into days. And that's true. A 25-minute fight is an eternity when you're in there. You think you have so many questions in your mind why you're actually fighting. I can't even explain it unless you've experienced it.
Look, Mike Tyson said everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face.
And on top of that, you're having to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Why this is going on.
You know what? That means a lot to me when you told me that, but you've told me about your papa. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your papa so they understand why that's so important to you?
Yeah, man, my papa was a great guy. He raised me. My parents got divorced when I was really young, and he boxed in the Army. He had a son that was a great boxer. Took third in nationals, beat up Tommy Morrison, won 300 and something boxing matches, lost I lost a handful. I can't even count how many he lost on my hands and my toes. So I mean, he was just a stud, and he was driven towards partying and doing the wrong things in life, and that cost him his career. And he was shot right above the heart, and it blew the top artery off his heart, and he was never able to compete again. And that really hit home for my grandpa. And for years, that gym just sat there. He wouldn't let anybody come. And then I kept bugging him, and I kept bugging him, and I kept bugging him. And then it started out with just a jab. You know, me and him go out there, and I'd just throw some jabs. And then it'd be a little bit more. He'd be like, hey, slip a little bit, you know. And then the more involved he got, the more passionate I become. Well, I wanted to be just like him. So I went and I joined the Army, and I did all these things, and I missed him while I was gone. And when I would come home, I'd work out in the gym, and he'd work out with me. And then I got back, finished my service, started college. I was like, you know, I have time to. I grew up watching MMA fights when it was, I think it was called Bar None fighting back then. They had Blockbuster tapes, and I'd be like, Papa, I want to do that. He's like, that's crazy, you know. And I was like, well, I'm gonna do it. And he'd be like, well, I'll be there if you do it. So I started training, getting ready for it, and so I started fighting these amateur fights. And then I was like, well, Papa, I'm gonna do some kickboxing. And he'd be like, just walk forward and throw 1-2s. And he's like, they're gonna kick your leg, but just walk forward and throw 1-2s. And I was winning kickboxing matches. I lost an exhibition by decision, but I won all my other kickboxing matches. And then I started a lot of MMA fighting. Then I've come to fight Charlie Morrison. He's a state champion from Skytook, Oklahoma. And that's when my grandpa was really sick. And he told me, that was the first time he couldn't be like next to me. And he said, I can't corner you in this fight, but I'm going to be here. And I was like, okay, I got it. Like, I didn't really understand why he didn't want to do that, but I didn't know that he had colon cancer. Like, I didn't know it was that he was wearing like Depends and stuff like that. So I didn't understand, but I was like, whatever. So I went and I actually got drunk the night before the fight. And I wasn't training. I told him I was training, and he was going through chemo and stuff. And I came in the last week, and I sparred with Christian every day, and he beat the crap out of me. I remember him beating it.
I think I remember some of those training sessions.
Yeah, we would fight.
Yeah.
And I remember he cut me open, kneed me right in the face, and cut my orbital bone, right on my orbital bone. And I realized, I was like, man, I'm not in shape. And then I go there at the Hard Rock Casino. I'm 21 years old, and here's this Spartan-looking man, and looks like a guy you'd see in the movies, just ripped and jacked. And he's like, this, you know, I'm gonna derail the Todd Hunter train. And he's a really emotional guy, and he's talking like that. And I did everything wrong this whole camp, and he's trained like a madman. And I remember the bell rang, and we started fighting, and I realized that I was landing my jab consistently. I was landing my jab, but I wasn't believing in it. And then the first round ends, and Christian's like, why aren't you taking him down? You know, you're a great wrestler. This is your chance to show everyone. Just go out there and take him down. And at that moment, I had to make a decision, and I was like, man, what am I gonna do? Like I really didn't believe in my wrestling then. Like the term state champion was like, whoa, state champion, you know, wrestled in college. So I didn't go out there and take him down. And I looked across, and my grandpa's slipping in his chair, slipping. And I was like, I'm going to stand up with this guy, and I'm going to beat the hell out of him. And I'm going to show him, you know, that he can't take me down. And I went out there, and I fought that fight, and it was a decision. And that was the last fight my papa was ever at. So that one probably means the most to me. But it was the adversity of everything that went into that is when I realized I really loved fighting, because I realized that he was there till the very end. You know what I mean? So when I go back and I fight, it's like being at home. For me, for those minutes is something completely different than it is for everybody else. And that's the best explanation I can give about the subject. That pretty much, I mean, that's about as in-depth as I can get.
That's a good thing, man. That's a good story. But now now you're a pro fighter. You're currently under contract with the UFC, but that might not be in the future. We don't know yet. And now you open a gym. I never thought you would open a gym. I never saw you. You taught me a lot of things, but I never saw you as a coach. So how's that feel?
Man, it's good. I like to see the guys grow, and it's been hard for me because I was always, I don't know if you remember, I was always very impatient. I'm a visual learner. I watch, and I can pretty much do the move since I was young. If you show me or you catch me one time, I pretty much understand the concepts of the move, and it doesn't happen twice. Unless it was Christian and he'd do it over and over and over and over and over. And so trying to teach, for me, was learning the vocabulary to keep their interest and show them that it works at the same time was a hard transition for me because I was just a doer. You just show me and I just do. So it really opened up my game, I feel like, strategically, because I had to talk about the moves. So I had to learn about the proper terminology to teach the move, and in doing so, I feel like it's made me better, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the companionship I've got with these guys now. I mean, they're all good guys, and I like them all, and I wouldn't. There's nothing that I really want to do besides train.
Awesome.
And teach.
So what's the future? Where are you going? What's next? There's got to be some mountains left you haven't climbed yet.
Man, there's a mountain. I was supposed to fight Tyler Minton, and I don't know if it's happened yet. But or what's exactly happening with that situation. He was on Tough 19, and he's 7-1 or 8-1. Be a great fight on September 11th at the Hard Rock Casino. But if it doesn't happen, I have a replacement fighter. His name's Dylan. Dylan's a funny guy, man. I can't even understand the way his concepts are or what goes on in his day-to-day life. He must not get any at home or something. I don't know. I mean, something's going on with him. I think he needs to quit jerking it, and get a different girlfriend or something. Or maybe he's married. I don't remember now. But
What? Tell us about this guy. Why do you think this about him? Is he giving you some stuff?
Oh
or?
man, he's always. Anytime I'm in the spotlight, Dylan just can't handle it. He's just gotta chime in and say whatever he can to get the spotlight on him.
This is a local fighter.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to know if you could pick your top 3 or top 4 fights that you want before you retire. Who are the guys right now that you want to fight just because you love to fight and you want to see what would happen?
I'd like to fight Gunnar Nelson.
Now tell us a little bit about why you'd want to fight
Gunnar Nelson's a black belt. He's one of Conor McGregor's training partners. I feel like they say he's a black belt and he's one of the greatest. Joe Rogan says he's one of the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners in the UFC. And when I watch him, I just feel like stylistically, I feel like he hasn't fought. Brandon Thatch is a striker. He hasn't fought a guy like me. I feel like I break him. And not only that, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's when Joe Rogan says he's one of the best in the business, I believe what Joe Rogan says. I believe he's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of the business. So I would like to at least roll with the guy. You know what I mean? Okay. I want to test my skill set.
Okay.
So another one that I would like to fight is, there's so many that I would like to fight. So there's so many. That's the one right off the.
That's the one off the top of your head.
Yeah, and I would like to fight the Russian that I was supposed to fight because he's out of touch with time and reality. I didn't duck you. You're an idiot. I'd beat the brakes off him. He's fighting stand-up fighters, and he's a good stand-up fighter. When he fights someone that embraces the grind and okay stand-up fighter, I feel like he's going to do good. I mean, they're going to do good, and he's going to see what it's like to be in a real fight. He's fought jiu-jitsu guys, but they don't have takedowns. I've watched jiu-jitsu guys take him down with ugly takedowns, and I feel like if you get someone who has good top control and is a good wrestler, they're not just going to let you up. So you're going to have to work from those bad positions, and we just haven't seen that yet out of him.
Okay.
So those are both probably two number one fights I'd like to fight.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming you're a big fan of the sport. I mean, you fight, so you got to be a big
Yeah,
fan.
yeah. I mean,
So-
not as much anymore as I'm.
So you don't have any dream matches you're hoping that the UFC or Bellator will put together between some of your favorite fighters?
Yeah. I would like to. First of all, I'd like to see GSP stay retired. He went out the champ. Second, I don't really want to see Robbie Lawler Johnny Hendricks hug Robbie Lawler again for 5 rounds. I think that sucks for everybody. I'm looking forward to watching. If I did watch GSP come back, I would want it to be a super fight against Anderson Silva. They just ruled his piss test inconclusive because they took 2 different samples and they were both different. One was negative and one was positive. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that kind of makes me wonder that someone fudged one of them. So I mean, I'd like to see him come back, and I'd like to see that fight. I feel like that fight needs to happen.
GSP and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a money Mayweather and
Okay, I get it.
Manny Pacquiao type fight, but for MMA.
Any other dream matches you'd like to see?
I'd like to see Royce Gracie come back and fight Ken Shamrock.
Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock. You know, I'd like to see that too. But there's one I'm thinking about, and you haven't mentioned yet. Randy Couture said he'd have to think hard about coming out of retirement if Fedor's coming back. I don't know about you, but I don't care how old they are. I would like to see that fight.
I'd like to see Fedor and Randy Couture fight. But you know what's crazy, and a lot of people, I might take a lot of shit for this, but I never looked at Fedor, and be like, wow, he's just a god of fighting. I feel like he was fighting in the right time when there was little competition. He was fighting freaks. I want to say freak, not in a derogatory term, but like huge guys. You get guys that are 7 foot tall. He was fighting all these.
He fought in Pride, and
Yeah.
they have a flair for matchmaking.
Yeah,
over
for
there in
matchmaking,
Japan.
for
Yeah.
sure. And I feel like he didn't really fight any of the hitters like Dan Henderson and those guys. And when he did, he lost. So when they he lost his last, I think, he lose his last 3 fights?
I want to say he lost 3 or 4 fights before he retired.
Yeah. And I feel like that means that he's pretty much, I feel like you got to know when to stop. His time was his time. I watch state champion wrestlers now that I'm like, man, they wouldn't have been state champions back in my time when I wrestled, because the guys that were state champions would have destroyed those guys. So you always have those times in life when there's really great guys, mediocre guys, and then really great guys.
There's some more controversy here going on with this Reebok deal. Now, I train with a lot of fighters, and I know a lot of them make their money off sponsorships and ticket sales. I'm not exactly sure how the UFC pay structure works on that, so why don't you fill us in?
The Reebok deal isn't what it's cut out to be honest with you. If you're an entry-level fighter and you have 1 to 5 fights, you're getting $2,500. So I don't feel like that's good for anyone, because I make around $22,000 off my sponsors, and I'm an entry-level fighter, so that's a huge pay cut. And for the upper-level guys like Robbie, Lawler, the 170-pound champion, and John Jones, the 205-pound champion, I feel like those guys, they're taking a huge pay cut too, because they're getting $40,000 for their sponsorships, for their Reebok sponsorship, and that's the exclusive sponsor they can wear inside the cage. And for a select few guys, like 8 guys, they get to wear Monster too. I don't know how much that deal is, but they'll wear the Reebok and the Monster logo. But the big person here that's making all the money for these uniforms is the UFC. And I understand branding and how it works, so it makes sense from a business perspective for the UFC. But then you got to realize, hey, if this is a business and these aren't individualized fighters anymore, they're we're going to put them underneath a uniform policy, then there needs to be a fighters union to negotiate the pay structure between the UFC, Reebok, and the fighters, because the promotion's making all the money and the fighters are getting paid less than 2%.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, I don't think people think about it, but they don't get paid by the hour. They get paid by the fight, and then they have to pay taxes, and then they have to pay gym fees, coaches, all the people they got to pay. I mean, honestly, by the time it's all said and done, how much does a fighter make at the end of the year if he fights 3 or 4 times?
On a local level, I would say it's they probably make $10,000, but I've been pretty fortunate. You know, locally I make a lot more money than all the other fighters around here. I've been blessed by a good following and really good people in my life. And Whitetail Properties is a great sponsor, and they're helping me on my journey towards the top. And Excel Construction, Mid-America Pipeline. You know, I wouldn't fight without those guys because I would lose too much money between work for my own company and fighting if I didn't have my sponsorships to substitute the income. You know what's crazy? Now I actually don't make money. I pretty much break even between fights, even with the sponsorships versus running my own business. Because if I'm away from my business for a month or two, it's going to cost me money from mistakes and things, and I'm going to miss out job opportunities to bid jobs, to oversee the job. I'd have to outsource it to a foreman or a supervisor, so I'm not going to make any money like I was making doing it myself. So people need to think about that. And on a local level, you know, if you're just fighting, then you're poor. So
It's a weird job. I don't know why. You just got to love to fight to do this job, man.
yeah, and you got to love your fans. I don't do it for the money, because if I was in this for the money business, man, if I just fought, and I never went to college or whatever, I guess that would seem like a decent amount of income. If I fought 4 fights a year, I'd probably make locally. I probably maybe get close to 6 figures with sponsorships and fighting. But if I didn't have the sponsorships and stuff, and I was just fighting for like a non-televised promotion, there's no way those guys are making over 10,000. And if they are, I'd like to see it, because there's just not that much money in it.
Man, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I'm behind the scenes a lot because we go to a lot of the fights. We're backstage. We kind of see how things kind of run, and it's like none of these fighters have any business sense. They're fighters. I mean, you're lucky. I mean, some guys have went to college. Some guys have business, but most fighters are just guys who love to fight, and they have no idea what they're doing. And it's like, man, there's no safety net. There's nobody protecting these guys. I mean, it's so easy. I wonder how many fighters you never see fight that would have been champions, but because they have no business sense, they just never made it that far.
There's probably quite a few, and then there's also quite a few that are mismanaged that could have been champions, but never got the opportunity. And then there's quite a few that'll fight their whole lives, and they'll basically be journeymen. And a journeyman is a guy who fights, doesn't really have anything else going on in his life, and he just takes fights and takes fights and takes fights for paydays, because that's what he does for a job. It doesn't matter to him if he wins or loses. I mean, of course he wants to win, but it's not the end of the world if he loses. And they make decent income, but what happens when their body gives up? Then what are they going to do after they fought for 15 years and took those beatings on short notice?
Yeah, it's not a
It's not a good career opportunity. It's not a good opportunity.
it's a crazy life. You just got to love to do it, man. You just got to love to do it. I feel like it could be ran better, though. I really feel like you wouldn't lose a whole lot of money to add a little bit of ethics and take care of your fighters a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, ethics would be huge in the sport. That's the biggest deal with the promoters and the matchmakers is they're all snakes, especially on the local level. And you know, even a lot of the gym owners, which is crazy, is how corrupt it all is. I can honestly say I've never met so many bad people until I started fighting professionally. And when I did that, you realize that there's bad people and then there's business people. And at the end of the day, it's all business except for the people that hold grudges. And you might beat up one of their fighters or whatever, and then they hold grudges and they just want to see you fall. Just like Floyd Mayweather, everyone wants to see him to get beat. I want to see him go out undefeated. Just like, you know, and the champ. Just like I watched GSP go out the champ. That's how I want to remember my favorite fighters.
Yeah, I like it when guys realize, hey, it's probably time. It's probably time for me to step down. I think it was. It's so funny how invested we get in our favorite fighters. I was a huge Chuck Liddell fan, and I walked out of one of his fights when he started losing with tears in my eyes. I just couldn't believe it. Broke my heart. My favorite fighter just lost. Chuck Liddell, he's invincible. He just knocks everybody out. And you get invested in him if you follow him long enough, man. You start to care about him. And it's, I think we should take better care of them somehow. I think a little bit of ethics in the business would go a long way.
Well, just like the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball, they all have retirements and they're all I think the minimum, I don't remember what the minimum is, but they're all make a decent salary for the rest of their life. And it's crazy because at age 40, most of them are crippled. So you know, I mean, they can't go get a job where they have to do hard manual labor because a lot of them didn't finish their educations. You know, I was fortunate. I have 2 degrees and I finished my education and I'm happy about that. But a lot of them, hey, you're the number 1 draft pick. Are you going to stay in school and make no money, or are you going to go make a lot of money? You know, and they do that, and then they live that lifestyle, making money. You're counting on the money being there forever, and then one day it's not there. So you can't just go get another job. If you blow out your knee, it's over.
You know, it's so weird we're talking about a professional sport. Because usually when we talk about professional sports, you're talking about the obscene money in it. But in mixed martial arts, it's like there's a severe lack of pay structure. Do you think it's just that new, or you think they're just being greedy with it?
No, the promoters is the problem. You know, that you got so many individualized promoters and promotions that they're the ones making all the money, and they're trying to give the scraps to the fighters, which, you know, they're good businessmen, and they're usually good talkers, and that's what really puts them in the position to be that guy. Is they're opportunists. And in my life, the opportunists have always seemed to do decently well. But I don't think it's right. I think that they have to go to sleep at night, and I feel like their moral compass is definitely off of center.
When these young guys, you've got a gym now and you're coaching. I'm not sure if you've had a young guy yet come to you with the want, the desire, say, hey, I want to be a pro fighter. But when that happens, what are you going to tell him? What's your advice?
You know, I do. I have a few. I have a few guys, and I tell them to keep coming. I said, you know, I teach 3 days a week. I tell them that, you know, they need to go catch the Clinch Home Gym for the other two days a week. And when they do that for at least 3 months, and don't miss it, don't miss a day, that 5 days a week, then we'll talk about it, because you have to have dedication. And I can't be there holding your hand, because I have so many students that if I did that, I wouldn't be able to do anything else in my personal life. And if you show me that commitment, I'll show you commitment, and I'll try to make your dreams a reality, just like my coaches did for me.
Man, that's awesome. You know, what do you tell them about work and balancing after you see a guy's got a commitment? I mean, because what the hell if he blows out a knee, man? If he ain't got medical insurance, his fight career's over.
Well, I mean, thank God for Obamacare, I guess. I mean, everybody supposedly has medical insurance now.
Not everybody. It doesn't work for everybody, but keep going.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work. Obamacare doesn't work for me as well. But you know, I just hope nothing like that happens in my gym. And if it does, it's an unfortunate circumstance. And I hope the company puts them on light duty and goes ahead and lets them work just because they're chasing a dream.
What do you
doesn't
do?
mean they should be punished.
What's light duty for a fighter? Oh, you mean the company they're working for to pay for training and stuff?
Yeah.
I don't think people think about that too. They think fighter's a fighter and that's what he does for a living. Most of them have full-time jobs, raise families, and they still find time to train.
Yep.
Those are the ones that amaze me the most.
You know
what I mean? That's a lot of work, man.
It is. You know, and it takes up a lot of time. You know, I gave up a lot of things. My youth, a lot of summers went by where I had fights, and there was even a few times where I gave up part of my deer season. And for me, deer season's huge. You know, that's my favorite part of the year. I love to bow hunt, and that's one of the reasons I feel like me and Whitetail Properties, one of my sponsors, go hand in hand together, because I believe in everything they're doing. You know, developing land for hunting and the conservation for the future hunters so they have places to hunt. All those things are good things for the kids, and that's why they're probably my top two favorite sponsors that'll be on my gear on September 11th.
So who are all your sponsors? Who's sponsoring Andrew right now?
Excel Construction, they sponsor a NASCAR team as well. That they're in the top two with me. That one, I'd say it's one of my favorite sponsors because it took my dad. I would say it took him 4 years to follow in my dream to where he become a believer that I could do it. And when I convinced my old man that this was me, and he accepted that journey for me and helped me, that meant a lot to me. So that was definitely a huge opportunity for me. I want to thank Ready Every Second. They gave me bonuses for finishing my opponents on Access TV. Like the last fight I had was Levi the Marine Avery. He trained at Triton here in Tulsa, so I really enjoyed beating him up. And anytime I get to compete with a guy who talks a lot like Dylan and Levi, I'm going to enjoy beating them up, and it's pretty cool that they're both going to come out of Triton. So I look forward to that. I don't know. I don't feel like that's the best place to train at in Oklahoma. If you're around the Clinch headquarters with Christian Durr, I feel like you should definitely hit up that gym because you're buying something that I don't really believe in. I mean, I wouldn't say believe in. I mean, I think the instructors over there are good in certain aspects, but I don't feel like they understand the game like Christian Durr does. And if you sat down with the owner of Triton and the owner of Clinch, Christian Durr, you would understand in 10 minutes of watching them roll and then 10 minutes of them just talking to you about life, the difference and the differences there would be. And I just hope everybody takes a chance just to cross train. Go see for yourself. Go train at Triton. Go see what it's like. Go look at the progression. Go look at the athletes that they put on the big stage, and then go to train at Clinch. And then go train at whatever other mixed martial arts school that are local cross train. I believe that everybody should cross train, and I feel like you should make your own interpretation yourself. Don't just buy into business jargon. What school's better? Go try them out.
Well, there's also a saying. This is a saying in the advertising industry. There's no such thing as the perfect Pepsi, but there's the perfect Pepsis. Everybody's different. And everybody's looking for something different.
Looking for something different.
And every gym has its own style, its own flavor, and you got to find out who you are and what you're looking for in a gym.
I agree with that.
I mean, you got to bounce around a little bit, and you'll find, someone's perfect gym might not be
your
yours
perfect gym
or mine.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And right now I don't think my gym is ready to start putting out mixed martial arts fighters, but guys who want to grapple, yeah, you come train with me and we'll win some gold medals together. And we're working towards getting the right tools and the right coaches up in Sand Springs to build mixed martial artists. That's the end goal. But right now our goal is focused on grappling. If you love to grapple, come roll with me. We do no-gi, we do gi, but I have a different flavor. We do a little bit different stuff than we did at Clinch. I still teach the philosophy that Christian passed down to me, and I teach the techniques, but I play with a lot of other stuff. But we do focus heavily on the basics. But every gym's different, brother. And you got to find yours.
And I think you got to be married to the basics. I'm the same way, Mike. I preach what Christian taught me to fight with, because I fought with it time and time and time and time again. I went through adversity in some fights, had broken nose several times, busted orbital bone, broke hand, broke my foot, broke my thumb. So all these times, but I was still able to finish the moves. If you look at my professional record, all by submission. And I had a few knockouts in my amateur career, but most of them was by submission. He taught me to take calculated risk with high percentage submissions, which are basic submissions. You have to be married to the basics. He used to say that all the time. And now I catch myself saying it. But it's true. And I embrace the grind. I try to teach my students the grind. So when you roll with them, they're not trying to be disrespectful, but they're trying to break your will and submit you at the same time. There's a little bit of a difference. And Christian really, if you ever watched him roll with me, he always embraced the grind.
Yes.
And he beat it into me.
Yes. The pressure that guy has when he's passing my half guard or my quarter guard
Is unreal.
Most people can't even pass my half guard. I mean, it's pretty good. And the pressure, I feel like my leg is going to break. I don't know where it comes from because the man's not that heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, his top game presence, man, is
Amazing.
It's amazing. You know, we are the sum of our numbers. And whatever you do the most or train the most is what you're going to do when that fight happens. And you know, you got to be realistic with yourself. If you want to be a good fighter, then you need to focus on those moves that have proven, those high percentage moves, because that's what you're gambling on. You're gambling on the highest percentage moves. Don't be drilling something that has a 5% chance. You're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. And because if you end up trying it, 5% chance, you're probably going to get punched in the face. You know what I mean?
Probably right.
Now, that doesn't mean that moves outside of other people's skill set won't fit in your game because everybody's game's different. I'm flexible. I do a lot of 10th planet stuff, but I can't teach that to half the guys that come into my school because they're not made that way. I couldn't probably teach you rubber guard. You know what I mean? But you do things that I can't do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to figure out your own game.
Yeah.
In grappling, you know, if you don't, you just got to pay your dues, get beat up, and then every time you get tapped out, you're going to realize, hey, he caught me in this, and you're going to grow from it. You might even start utilizing that in your game because you like it.
Yes.
And then you're going to grow as a mixed martial artist and a jiu-jitsu player.
Yes. Yeah, you know, man, I love to grapple, dude. I love to get in the mat, and I love to train. I love it when people come over to roll. I hope everybody shows up at class. I don't like it when it's a small class because I want to roll with 5 or 6 guys. When guys like you walk in the door to come visit me, I get excited. I know I'm getting ready to get my butt kicked, but I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna probably learn something.
Yeah.
You know, but that grind you're talking about, I think it's a good thing for all jiu-jitsu guys to start wrestling. Start learning it, start learning how it works, start using that pressure.
That's the next evolution of fighting.
It is.
In the next 15 years to 10 years, you're going to watch maybe even sooner, maybe 8 years, you're going to watch the next generation of fighter. The guys that are, when they're not doing, I have 15-year-olds right now, when they're not wrestling, they're doing jiu-jitsu. So when you start in the down position, they're going to throw their hooks in and they're going to ride you out the whole wrestling match because their stabilizer muscles are going to be so good because they've been taking people's backs every day and holding them down. So they're going to be able to annihilate the old generation of fighter. Every 10 years, you're going to watch a different generation, a different breed. And I feel like they're always going to beat the old breed. Not because the guys weren't tough, but because they didn't have as good of coaches and as knowledgeable coaches as the generation before. If you look at, since times began, they keep getting smarter, better athletes, better nutrition, more speed, stronger, more technical. So it's going to keep progressing.
You know, we've seen a lot of fighters come in with wrestling backgrounds and embrace stand-up and striking. And I'm seeing more and more wrestlers embrace jiu-jitsu more. And we're going to see some monster grapplers coming out that we haven't seen since the early days, when the Gracies first came over and we watched Hickson for the first time. We're going to see some super grapplers coming out, man. We're going to see guys. I got kids right now that are number 2. One's number 2 in the state. He's 9 years old, I think. Number 2 in the state in wrestling, and he's training jiu-jitsu. If he's not wrestling, he's training jiu-jitsu. What's he going to be like in 20 years?
Amazing.
He's amazing now. I will just sit down, tell everybody to shut up, stop coaching, and watch him roll for 30 minutes with Alex, and just watch him. And it's as good as anything I've ever paid to see. You know what I mean? It's amazing how good these kids already are. They entertain me. I was like, leave them alone. Let them. I like to watch them struggle with stuff. Could I coach them through this technique? Yes. But what I like to see is a young man struggle with it and figure it out himself. Because once he does that, I don't have to tell him again. Sometimes if you coach somebody too soon, you give them the answers too early, they won't remember it the next match. Sometimes you just got to shut up and watch them roll,
I
man.
agree. I totally agree with that. I remember Christian never showed me an armbar defense for, I'd say, for a month. He never showed me a guillotine defense for a few months. He didn't show me how to properly apply a guillotine for 6 months. But that's what's cool is I feel like he was letting me, work through adversity. I'm sorry, and I feel like it paid off. And I feel like that same situation is going to pay off with those kids because when you've been there and you struggled and you embrace the grind, you're going to be more successful than someone that just had everything handed to them.
Ben, that's the great thing about grappling or in martial arts in general. As long as you're sparring, as long as you're going, we take a lifetime worth of adversity and we cram it into an hour.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And what comes out the other end amazes me. It amazes me what I've seen people turn into after a few months of martial arts. They completely change, and man, it's amazing the transformation you see in some people.
I agree. Even guys, like I have guys that have lost 20 plus pounds, and I've only been open a few months. I've got kids that have won gold medals. I've only been open a few months, so those are the rewarding experiences I look forward to. I have this little kid named Dane, and he's 6, and he's a wrestling phenom, and his jiu-jitsu is getting better, and he's going to be really scary, and he's going to be a competitor. Just like you were talking about, I look forward to seeing those kids like that. That's the generation that has me excited because they started both at such a young age. Man. And they've already kind of mastered one at their age. For their age bracket, they're at the top of their class. So if they keep going at both, it's going to be crazy.
I can't wait. I'm excited. I can't wait till I'm at that age where I'm retiring from grappling. I'm watching all these young kids that came in when I first opened my gym to sit back and watch that generation take over and see where they go and what they create. The creativity in young minds is crazy. I had a young man the other day. He's a wrestler, so he likes to cradle. He likes to get the cradle like he's pinning a guy. I was like, you can't pin in jiu-jitsu. And he reached up with his leg, and he hooked the guy's inside foot that he had around the knee, and he heel hooked that guy with his leg and tapped him out. I said, do that again. I said, then I went and drilled it because I was amazed. I've never seen that before. And he taps people out. I never showed it to him. He just figured it out. He said, the guy's foot there, so I thought I'd grab it and twist it and see what happens. And it hurts. It hurts. You tap to it.
That's awesome.
So, man, you give these kids a little bit of tools and sit back and watch them. They might be teaching you in 5 years.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm definitely a believer that there's not one person out there that you can't learn from. And it can be a person you don't like, or it can be a person that beat you up or that you beat them up. You can learn from anyone. I don't really feel like there's an age or a description. You can learn something from everyone.
Yeah. My dad used to tell me, if you shut up long enough and listen, you're going to learn something. I used to talk over a lot of people. I still do sometimes. He's like, would you shut up? You'll start learning stuff when you shut up. And he was right. What's the first thing that you think of when you wake up?
Man, usually the first thing when I wake up is I have 25 messages, 4 phone calls, and I'm just like, fuck. To be honest, that's my day every day. I gotta answer a bunch of customer questions or I gotta answer a bunch of employee questions. It's just, man, that part sucks.
That does suck, because the first thing I wake up in the morning is I wake up and I start thinking about jiu-jitsu, man.
Yeah, if I didn't have that
I mean?
going on, I would definitely be thinking more along those lines of just training it, or jiu-jitsu or wrestling. I really like to wrestle. I have a lot of fun wrestling. So I feel like I'm not a traditional jiu-jitsu player. I mean, you've been around me since I was a kid. I would consider myself like a catch wrestler.
Josh Barnett said the other day it's so funny. People say stuff, and it's like, and I can see your point. I don't see it 100%, but I see your point. He says it's absolutely a waste of time to start on your knees. And I was like, I got to think about it. I said, do I agree with that 100%? No. But do I think more people should start standing up and learn to wrestle? Yes. Do I think they have to do it every single time they roll? No. But how do you mix it up when you teach jiu-jitsu? Do you always start? Do the adults start on their feet, or do you mix it up?
I have them. The ones that want to start on their feet, I make sure I have them start on their feet. If they want to start on their feet with me, I have a runner-up, 2-time runner-up state champion. He starts on his feet every time. His goal is to come in there and take me down, and I feel like that's all he comes for, is the opportunity to try to take me down. And it doesn't matter if I get a submission or I win the transition or I get the takedown on him. That's not what he comes for. He comes just to take me down. So if I took that part of away, I don't think he would come. And I had a multiple time state champion on the national championship team from UCO. He would come, and I really love standing up and wrestling with these kids and guys. And I mean, even since I was young, I've always stood up. And I really like it. I mean, I feel like that adds an element to the game. But if you're stalling standing up, then I feel like you should make them start down. And a lot of the new guys, they just grab and hold each other. So until they develop the concept of we're not just grabbing and holding each other, we're actually trying to apply moves, then you should start them in fixed situational positions.
Okay, one more question, and I'll let you go, man. What's the future, Andrew Todd Hunter, brother?
Man, I'm gonna do what's best for me. There's a lot of haters and there's a lot of critics, and I'm sorry I can't appease all your needs or wants or idiotic requests. But I'm gonna do what's best for me. And if what you have planned is not best for me, then I'm not gonna do it because I'm in the fuck you position.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
If you're waiting for that perfect timing, it's not going to happen. You have to create the perfect time. We have, as humans, we have something that no animal has. And what it's called is imagination. And what imagination allows you to do, it allows you to see it yourself actually becoming the person you want to be.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.